All right, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of hashtag CB99 Talks. It's Combo Breaker 99 in the house once again, and this is episode 40. And I'm back with the last episode of the year. Maybe. I mean, pretty much this will be the last episode of the year. I was doing this on a live stream yesterday, but connection got all goofed up, so I just had to come back on here and I'll put this episode out now. But yeah, man. Anyways, I'm back. I'm back again with my year-end episode, year-end review episode for 2020. 2020, it's been a draining year for everyone. The pandemic, politics, the riots and the racial injustice, so many things going on this year. It's been just all around draining. We've been having so many people losing loved ones, losing their jobs. I have to say it's been a rough year for all of us, but in a way, it's kind of taught me to adapt to certain situations. It's kind of brought something different out of me that I didn't know I had. I know I was able to do some of these things. Like I could step up my game, but I had to go in these other lanes and do other productive things. I couldn't necessarily knock out what I wanted to do on my bucket list for certain things, but I stayed productive in some other ways. And definitely worked on this channel. Got some good content put out this year, and yeah, I just kept on pushing it. Like I said, I didn't even see myself working this hard on the channel this year, but I was kind of put in that situation where I just had to. I had to get the right setup and say, okay, let's make it happen. And I kind of feel like the same thing's been going on for the fight world. It's been hectic, it's been stressful, but we got to give it to these fighters in all combat sports. They've been willing to get back in the ring and the octagon, training in harsh conditions. Some of these fighters with makeshift gyms, just making it work for themselves, traveling on short notices for fights. Traveling in general, just to travel in general on planes, hitting the road constantly to different counties and states. It's hard. It's hard work. And then the number one, man, for me taking that COVID test, shout out to these fighters who are consistently taking that COVID test, for every single fight. Some of them are taking it more than once during, a fight camp. So it's rough out there, man. I got to give it to him. I got to give it to, Dana White in this situation. He went above and beyond, not just for the fighters, of course. It was a time to line his pockets and set the bar high and outdo the competition, especially, with boxers. So with what the boxing's game is doing. So in a way, it still saved the sport of MMA, and it got boxing to follow suit as well. And yeah, overall, like with what MMA was able to put on across the board, from LFA to Bellator, Invicta, and of course the UFC, we got good fights. It wasn't just like stay busy fights. We got some classic fights out there. So 2020, whenever they came back and put these cards out, we got some fights. We got the best fighting the best. We got champions staying active. So with that being said, I just want to go back and revisit some of my classic fights. The classic fights that this year brought. And also, man, yeah, shout out to Angela Hill, first black female fighter in WMMA to headline a card. I know a lot of people started giving her hate over that. That was crazy. I don't know why. That's a big highlight for her. Angela Hill headlining the card, being that first black female to do that. That's big. That's definitely big. So you got to give her credit. You would if it was another nationality or race. So why not give it up to Angela Hill? So yeah, that was another memorable moment for not just Angela Hill, but for us too. That was another big moment for 2020. I just had to break it down in some top five lists for y'all. It was a lot to choose from, so I just had to do top fives of 2020. So I'm gonna go through the categories now for y'all. All right, so the categories I have for 2020, I have my top five submissions. I got my top five knockouts. I got my top five fighters that I want to see in the UFC in 2021. Now, this is just kind of wishful thinking, but these are certain fighters that I feel like the UFC needs to really bring to spice up their divisions. And I have my fight of the year. I got my fighter of the year. And I have my top five fights that we need in 2021. Again, these are going to be like fights that have been talked about, but they need to be made now. They need to be made ASAP. I might even have a couple more than five. So, yeah, man, let's go ahead and knock this thing out. Let me just pull out the list here. Let's go down the list of submissions, man. Go from five to one. All right, top five submissions. All right, first up, number five, LFA 93. Sammy Hughes, her first round guillotine choke over Danielle Henley. Now, this was a good fight. This was a good fight for Sam Hughes. She was just bouncing back after her loss to Vanessa Demopoulos. She wanted to go back in there and make a statement, possibly get another shot at the title. But since then, she signed to the UFC and fought Tisha Torres, who she lost to. But around this time when she was making this comeback after that Vanessa Demopoulos loss, she went in there, put on a solid striking clinic in the first round, backing Henley up, landing some good jabs, some good straights, and some good leg kicks, just applying all around good pressure on Danielle Henley. But it was towards the end of the round, whenever Henley shot in for a takedown, she grabbed the body lock. She went in for the body lock on Sam Hughes and tried to get the takedown. But the round was about over, so I don't know why she used that last 20 seconds to do that. Sam Hughes locked in. She locked that arm around the neck. She locked in that guillotine tight and she started squeezing. She was gritting and squeezing, as you can see here. She squeezed to the end of the bell. As soon as the bell sounded, she let go of Henley and Henley dropped right on her back and she was out. I was like, damn, I did not see that coming. I saw the striking clinic that Sam Hughes was putting on. I figured a stoppage was in play, maybe somewhere in like the second or third round. But that just lets you know that Sam Hughes has some tools and she is working to be a better fighter. She can go in there and strike with you, but if you give her the submission, she's going to take it. So, yeah, shout out to Sam Hughes. That's my number 5. All right, number 4, UFC Fight Night card, Waterson Hill. Got to go with Sabina Mazo, her third round rear naked choke over Justine Kish. All right, y'all. This was another fight, man. This was one of those fights where Justine Kish, she was just going in there and using her speed, her volume. She was just staying busy. She was constantly touching Sabina Mazo. This was a fight that she was winning. Mazo stayed in there. She stayed patient. She was getting hit with some shots, but she had a steady weapon in this fight. She was landing some nice head kicks throughout the fight. And I was saying, okay, if Justine Kishi doesn't turn this pace down, if she doesn't turn the activity down, one of these head kicks is going to be that one. And she took a big head kick in the third round. Sabina Mazo fired off that big head kick as she was stepping back, landed it, smack on the chin of Justine Kish, dropped her. I thought it was going to be a knockout, but Sabina Mazo, she jumped on the back, locked in that rear naked choke, pulled back. Justine Kish had the tap. It was one of those dramatic finishes, man, because Justine Kish was ahead on the cards, in my opinion. Sabina Mazo wasn't getting dominated or beaten up. She was always in the fight. She was just getting outpointed, but she stayed cool, calm, and collected. She was just waiting for that opportunity. And as soon as it came, bam, she took it, dropped her, made her tap. All right. Number 3, Bellator 252, Carrie Melendez, her first round rear naked choke over Emily King. You're going to see a lot of rear naked chokes on here. You're going to see a lot of submissions that are set up by strikes. And, I'm just trying to stick with the theme here a little bit because these are the fights that really impressed me. When a fighter can get submissions, by scoring good strikes. It's not all about the takedown and vice versa. It's not all about the strikes, but it's how you use it. If you're going in against a fresh fighter, you want to set up good jabs and you want to land good straight right hands to just tenderize an opponent and soften them up and get them down in that fashion instead of trying to exert so much energy by shooting in for a takedown. But if you go back and look at this fight here, Carrie Melendez dominated from the jump with a beautiful right hand, constantly snapping the head back of King. Honestly, like I said, I thought there was going to be a knockout on the horizon from Melendez, but she switched levels, threw a good right hand to the body on King. King went in, she grimaced, she started holding the stomach. Melendez followed up with a knee to the body. She dropped King. She went in, locked in for the rear naked choke, and made her tap. And I was just like, okay, yeah. Carrie Melendez, she's got power in both hands, but she also has a submission game because she could have went in for the ground and pound and maybe exerted some energy. And you could have seen Emily King try to weather that storm and come back. But much like Sabina Mazo, whenever she dropped her opponent, she just went in, found the weakness, got the back of her opponent, locked that arm around the neck, and she got into the rear naked choke. So shout out to Carrie Melendez. That's another strawweight one to come up that, I feel like is going to be a beast in the Bellator organization. All right, number 2, Invicta FC number 40. Chelsea Chandler, her first round rear naked choke over Olivia Parker. All right, y'all, I'm a big fan of Chelsea Chandler. She's a fighter that talks it, but she also walks it. And she went in this fight against Olivia Parker at 145. And that's the thing. Chelsea Chandler, she's a fighter that can fight at 135 or 145. She doesn't care who the opponent is or what the situation. She wants to fight. And she went in there against the undefeated featherweight, applied that pressure, landed some big left hands, but it was the left hand to the body that did the damage. She was landing some good straight left hands on the chin of Olivia Parker, but when she landed that body shot, Olivia Parker got a grimaced over, and then, but it was this other straight left hand. It was a vicious straight left hand that she landed at a good angle. She stuffed it right down the pipe, right on the chin of Olivia Parker, drops Olivia Parker, goes in for the kill. She gets the back, flattens Parker out, locks in the rear naked choke, and Parker taps. So yeah, that was another good win for Chelsea Chandler to show you what kind of beast she is at bantamweight and featherweight. All right, y'all. All right, number one. This was on the UFC Fight Night card, which the main event was Holly Holm versus Irene Aldana. My number one is GDR, her third round guillotine choke over Juliana Pena. That's Jermaine Durana May, her third round guillotine choke over Juliana Pena. Now, this was a good competitive fight. I'm not gonna lie, this was a good competitive fight where GDR had her moments in the first round with her striking. But the second round started to favor Juliana Pena a little bit more with her grappling and her clinch work. You know, she was really pushing GDR and starting to wear her out, going into that third round. And Pena, to me, she showcased some good striking throughout this fight. You know, this was kind of a competitive fight where both fighters they kind of chose to step out of the box. You know, you had Pena in there trying to strike with GDR, and she was being effective. And then you had GDR who was willing to clinch and try to get a submission win, you know. So you can never count a striker out like GDR. You know, she's been working. She's been working on the takedown defense. And if you leave your neck open, if you come in there careless, she's going to take the opportunity. And that's what happened. In round three, Pena got a little careless, shooting in for the body lock and the takedown. Whereas GDR, she just locked in around the heads. She stayed cool and she pulled down. She fell to the ground with it. And Pena was still clinching and holding on. While GDR squeezing, just being patient, waiting for the tap. Instead, Pena, she kind of looked like she started to twitch a little bit. So the referee stepped in, he pulled her off, and Pena was out. You know, Pena was out. You know, that's why, there was no need for a tap. I thought that she was about, I thought she was about to tap, but it looked like the more she held on, Pena was that type of fighter that just wants to show heart. So she stayed in it, until she passed out. So the ref, he saw that little twitch and as soon as he like broke him up, no, she was done. So I had to say this was number one. This was my number one submission of the year in WMMA. GDR scoring her first submission win over a solid grappler in Juliana Pena. So yeah, real quick recap, man. Let's go back up. Number 5, Sam Hughes, her first round guillotine choke over Danielle Henley. Number 4, Sabina Mazo, her third round rear naked choke over Justine Keach. Number 3, Carrie Melendez, her first round rear naked choke over Emily King. Number 2, Chelsea Chandler, her first round rear naked choke over Olivia Parker. And GDR, her third round guillotine choke over Juliana Pena. That's my number 1. All right, so let's jump to knockouts. And in the comment section, leave me your favorite submissions of 2021 as well. It could be men's MMA as well, but try to focus on WMMA if you can. Let me know in the comment section some of y'all's favorite submission wins. It can be in the UFC, Invicta, whatever, just like I did. But yeah, let's jump to these knockouts. Top 5 knockouts. Number 5, UFC Fight Night. Jessica Andrade, her first round stoppage win over Caitlin Chikagan. I had to go with this fight here, man, because I picked Caitlin Chikagan to win this fight, but Jessica Andrade, she kind of exposed something on Caitlin Chikagan, which I feel like, this is something that a lot of fighters need, and that's a strong core. You have to be strong on the legs. You got to be strong in the legs. You have to have a good foundation. You got to get respect from your opponent the way you turn your punches over. And Caitlin Chikagan, she had good moments in this fight. She had her moments where she was landing some good strikes, some good knees in the clinch, but never enough to get any respect on Jessica Andrade. If she had a strong core, she would be able to land some good, strong shots, good damaging shots. But Jessica Andrade, she stayed in the fight, got a good slam on Caitlin Chikagan. But it was towards the end of the round when they went back into the clinch, and Jessica Andrade fired off a big right hand to the body. And all you saw was Caitlin Chikagan just kind of like cuss and walk away. She was like, dropped the F-bomb, and she just kind of walked away to the other corner. And Jessica Andrade went after. She went in for the kill. And the referee, he went on and stopped it before she could take any more punishment. So, yeah, vicious stoppage. I had to go with that one. I love body shot knockout, so I had to give it to Jessica Andrade in that one for my number 5. UFC Fight Night again. Megan Anderson, her first round KO over Norma Dumont. Now, I know not a lot of people are big fans of Megan Anderson. I'm a fan of her style. I'm a fan of her. Even whenever she was in Invicta, I feel like there's still some moves and some things that she needs to add to her game. But I love a good knockout. I'm a sucker for a good right hand. And Megan Anderson, she went in this fight, showcased the Megan of old with some good solid power shots in this fight against Norma Dumont. She set Norma Dumont for the perfect right hand. Norma steps in. She fires off a good straight right hand down the pipe, drops her. She hits the canvas. Megan Anderson goes after. The referee has to step in because she's out. So yeah, that was my number 4 in there. Wasn't really like a big significant fight, that being Norma Dumont, her UFC debut. But like I said, I'm a sucker for a good right hand. All right, number 3, Invicta FC 39. This was a flyweight fight between Aaron Blanchfield and Victoria Leonardo. Aaron Blanchfield scores a big second round head kick KO over Victoria Leonardo. And this is what I'm talking about, Aaron Blanchfield, man. She's a beast. She's on the come up. She's known as a grappler. She's known as a BJJ artist. She's very strong on the ground, has very good wrestling skills as well, but she's been growing throughout the years. This was a fight where she showcased good striking. She wanted to test out her striking, and it was very impressive. She was landing some good left hands down the pipe in this fight. She was landing some good jabs as well. But it was in that second round, whenever she measured the distance well, she kind of fainted with a good, I think it was a good left hand or right hand upstairs on Victoria Leonardo. But then she fired off that head kick and dropped Victoria Leonardo right on the chin, knocked her out cold, about to jump on her. Referee stops it. I was like, yeah, this is what I'm talking about. This is the Aaron Blanchfield that I feel like needs to be signed to the UFC. All right, Invicta FC 43, number 2, Stephanie Geltmarker's first round knockout over Caitlin Salmons. Now, my number 1 and number 2 could alternate. Depends on my mood, but I feel like both of these fighters, they really went out, scored some big KOs here. Stephanie Geltmacher, this girl's a little powerhouse. I did my post-fight reaction to this. I knew that fight was going to be too much for Caitlin Salmons, whether it was on the ground, in the clinch, or from the outside. Stephanie Geltmacher, she didn't show Caitlin any respect. She went in for a clinch, slammed her. Caitlin Salmons scrambled back up. She went in for another clinch with her, really started to rough her up. As soon as they broke out, went back at a distance. Caitlin Salmons was trying to find that distance. She was trying to get a good jab going, but it was Stephanie Geltmacher that was really dictating that pace. Fired off a couple right hands and missed. But when she switched levels and threw that jab to the chest, fired an overhand right. I'm talking about she brought this overhand right from down bottom. She brought it from down bottom, fired over top, planted it right on Caitlin Salmon's chin and dropped her, knocked her out near cold. But when she hit the canvas, she looked dazed. She was out of it. But Stephanie Geltmacher tried to jump on her. The referee, he stopped it. Big first round knockout for Stephanie Geltmacher. Like I said, I did a post fight reaction on this one, but every time I talk about this fight, I get amped up again. I got to watch it over and over. That's how good this knockout was. It was like the first knockout on Stephanie Geltmacher's resume, so I could tell why she was amped up about this one. But yeah, she brought that right hand from down bottom. So yeah, I definitely had to put this one on here. Like I said, it can alternate from number 1 to number 2. But my number 1 from LFA 94, Loveth Young, her first round KO over Rena Norval. Now, I had to give this one to Loveth Young for a lot of reasons, just because, I'm a big boxing fan as well. And again, like I said, I'm a sucker for a good right hand knockout. I felt like Loveth Young really went in there and utilized a lot of good tools. She showed you that even if you're shorter by, maybe 3, 4, 5 inches than a fighter, you can be very effective from the outside. Loveth Young, she was being effective from the outside in this fight. She was very comfortable from the outside against a taller fighter. She was able to close in at a good angle and land her overhand right. And that's what you need to close the distance on a taller fighter. You throw the right hand over and you let that power come down on your opponent. So in this fight, right away, she was very comfortable in the clinch, very physically strong, landing some good right hands and left hooks throughout the fight, just controlling the distance. Is a good boxer, kind of like Guillermo, rigging down the balls of her feet, moving around comfortably. But at the same time, she's assertive with that power. And then finally, in that like last minute of the round, she sets up a good right hand, rocks Rena Norval, backs her up, follows up with another big overhand right. It's almost kind of like a straight right hand. When she lands it right on the chin, she drops Rena Norval, starts to go in for the kill. Referee, he stops it because she's out. She's done. So yeah, shout out to Loveth Young. First round knockout over Rena Norval. Very good boxing skill. Want to see more from Loveth Young. This girl's got power. I'm looking forward to her next fight. All right, so yeah, real quick recap. My top 5 KOs: Jessica Andrade, first round stoppage over Caitlin Chikagan. Number 4, Megan Anderson, her first round KO over Norma Dumont. Number 3, Erin Blanchfield, her second round head kick KO over Victoria Leonardo. Number 2, Stephanie Geltmacher, her first round knockout over Caitlin Sammons. And number 1, Loveth Young, her first round knockout over Rena Norval. So yeah, just like with the submissions, let me know in the comment section, guys, what were some of y'all favorite knockouts in WMMA of 2021? All right. So next category I want to jump to: top 5 fighters that should be in the UFC in 2021. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean this fighter has to be signed right away in the first quarter or the second quarter. I mean, this could be by the end of the year, going off of what type of performances they have or what type of activity they have in the octagon to prove their worth in the UFC. Or, even if they have to go into the contender series, these are like 5 fighters I feel like the UFC needs to kind of spice up their divisions, and again, some of it's kind of wishful thinking, especially with my number 5. Number 5, I have Denise Dynamite Kill-Holtz. Of course, I want to see Denise Dynamite Kill-Holtz fight for the Bellator Flyweight Championship belt against Juliana Velasquez. But like I said, eventually, and I know she did re-sign a Bellator contract, but if that's for like 2 or 3 fights, if she wins against Juliana Velasquez, defend the title maybe 2 more times, and maybe close out the year like in November or December of 2021, and sign over to the UFC. And that's only if she's not, that's only if she wants that star power, that type of exposure in the UFC. But I just feel like the UFC could use somebody like Denise Kill-Holtz in the flyweight division. I feel like she would be another added talent to the growing talent they already have. If she was in that top 10, she could really clean it out, in my opinion. I think she would get rid of the fighters of old, if that makes sense. Some of the older veterans, I think Denise Kill-Holtz has that type of arsenal. Kickboxing champion, black belt in judo, power in both hands, good distance management with her style. For a fighter at 5'3". So I think she brings a lot to the table. So I think the UFC could really benefit off a fighter like her in 2021. Number 4, Loveth Young. I'm going to say Loveth Young. I mean, it might seem a little premature. I know she's 2-1-1 right now, but if she wins in dominant fashion against an Invicta FC veteran on January, I think it's January 15th, correct me if I'm wrong. If she beats Kelly D'Angelo in that fight and maybe fights for the LFA strawweight title fight in her next fight, and maybe one fight after that, then I can see her maybe like the contender series, towards the end of the year, the summer, or even like Denise Kill-Holtz being signed in like 2021. So maybe she would need like a good 2-3 fights, 2-3 good impressive fights to be signed to the UFC in the strawweight division, because I think her style brings a lot to the table. Again, I feel like she's a very strong, a physically strong, powerful boxer for her size. Boxer striker. She's growing as a fighter. I think she's very physically strong on the ground. Still want to see some improvement on the ground. So if not, again, like I said, this is wishful thinking, but yeah, I would like to see somebody with her style in the UFC. Number 3, I'm gonna have to go with Chelsea Chandler. Again, Chelsea Chandler, she's a fighter that can fight at bantamweight. She's a fighter that can fight at featherweight, and she's a fighter that has mic skills. She's a fighter that likes to talk, and like I said, she can walk it. So if she calls you out, you best believe that she's ready to fight you. So Chelsea Chandler is a much needed presence right now in a dry bantamweight division. I can see her beating a lot of the bantamweights in the UFC right now. Hell, I can see her becoming a very strong featherweight. I could see her, getting her game up, getting her weight up, and taking on somebody like Felicia Spencer, honestly. So yeah, Chelsea Chandler, 3-1 right now, but I feel like her striking skill is on another level. She carries power in that left hand. And if she could get a fight with somebody like Kayla Harrison before getting like a contract to the UFC, and she beats a Kayla Harrison, then the UFC would be calling. There would be no contender series. The UFC would be calling if she beat somebody like Kayla Harrison, and they would be welcoming her open arms to either bantamweight or the featherweight division. All right, my number 2, I'm gonna go with Erin Blanchfield. Erin Blanchfield, I feel like she's a very, very dangerous flyweight right now. I feel like she's one of those fighters that it's very impressive how much she's able to soak in and really develop at 21 years old. She's like I said, at such a young age, she took up Brazilian jiu-jitsu and became a solid grappler, and after that, all of a sudden, she's in Invicta racking up wins against fighters like Kay Hansen, who got signed to the UFC before she did. And on top of that, she's always learning and growing in the octagon. You don't see that too often. Sometimes fighters can be one dimensional. They can stick to what their strength is, but Aaron Blanchfield's been kind of the kind of fighter to test out new things. Like a fight against Victoria Leonardo, she went in there and just said, "Okay, let me strike with you. Let me show you my levels of striking." And she scored a big head kick knockout. You know what I mean? So Aaron Blanchfield is a flyweight too that I feel would bring a lot to the table. It may be a little early to say she could beat some of the top 10 flyweights in the UFC, but I feel like she's definitely a presence that's going to be needed, by the end of the year. You know, we need a complete smart fighter. I think that's what we lack sometimes. We got a lot of one dimensional fighters, but we need fighters who like to think and use their mindset, which is going to lead to my number one. But yeah, Aaron Blanchfield, that's my number two. UFC could definitely use her in like 2021. She's a fighter I say no contender series. Just give her the contract. But yeah, leading to my number one, Tanisha Tennant. Tanisha Tennant actually should be in the UFC right now because she holds a win over Danielle Wolf in a lot of people's opinions. I for one feel like Tanisha Tennant did enough to beat the featherweight that night in the contender series. I feel like Tanisha Tennant um, made that featherweight and Danielle Wolf, who was 0-0, look mediocre. She definitely looked like a fighter that didn't need to be in the UFC, in my opinion. Tanisha Tennant showed you that she had different levels to her game. She was able to step up out of her weight class and take on a bigger, stronger fighter. So Tanisha Tennant is definitely a fighter that Dana White needs in a dry division, in the dry bantamweight division. Not the featherweight division. Tanisha Tennant is a bantamweight. So Dana White needs to bring her over to the bantamweight division ASAP. No more competing on the contender series. Just give her a contract. I mean, if not, Tanisha needs to fight for that bantamweight belt now in Invicta. Maybe defend it one or two more times, and then by the end of the year, like October, November, December, whatever, in 2021, she needs to be in the UFC. So if she just wins the title, that's fine too. And she doesn't defend it, but if she wins that title, boom, the UFC can use her at the end of the year. Because again, Tanisha Tennant, she is a fighter that possesses a skill set that I feel like no other bantamweight has in the UFC right now. I know y'all can agree or disagree with me on that. I know a lot of y'all going to disagree with me on that, but I feel like Tanisha Tennant has an IQ. She fights for herself. She always says, "I go in there and do me." She uses her strengths. She knows how to expose her opponent's weaknesses by being committed to her fighting style. And she just has that overall IQ and skill set that a lot of fighters don't have, not taking crazy chances. She'll go in there and make it a chess match if needed. If it's boring, it's boring. You know what I mean? And it's not boring to me, but I mean like the casual fan. So Tanisha Tennant, that's another type of style that they need in the bantamweight division. Another type of fighter they also need. So yeah, definitely have her. That's why I have her number one of all because, in my opinion, she won that contender series in a close fight against a very big opponent. And she came in, showed up, and showed out. But yeah, that's my list. Real quick, let's go back up and recap. Let's go back up and recap. Number 5, Denise Kill-Holtz. Number 4, Loveth Young. Number 3, Chelsea Chandler. Number 2, Aaron Blanchfield. And number 1, Tanisha Tennant. All right, so next on my list, my fight of the year. Now, I have a couple honorable mentions before I get to my number 1 fight of the year. It's like three honorable mentions. Because I feel like there was a lot of good fights in 2020, but there was one major fight that just wins by default on everybody's list. The hardcore fans and the casual fans. But real quick, I want y'all to check these fights out if you haven't seen them. Some honorable mentions. I have Bianca Saddlemeyer versus Florencia Greco. Now this is on one of the Brazilian cards. It's on SFT 22. So if you go to YouTube, just YouTube Bianca Saddlemeyer or Florencia Greco, YouTube either of those names, and the full fight will come up. This was a different type of MMA fight. There was actually some like custom rules for it. So there wasn't any clinch work or any ground game. It was just straight up back and forth action. I'm talking about just straight up boxing and striking at its bloodiest. I mean, this was real. Like It was 3 minute rounds as well. Like Bianca and Florencia, they were getting after it, but it was Bianca who was in there being most dominant, landing some good right hands, good body shots, kicks to the head, kicks to the body. I mean, these girls they were just letting it go. Like without those with the clinching, with the no clinching and no grappling rules, it just made for like a punch fest. It was bloody, man. It was crazy. Florencia, she almost suffered the same thing Joanna did. She had this big hematoma in her head. I mean, Bianca was just in there letting go. Bianca really took it to her. She outstruck. I mean, she got hit with some big shots, but it was really Bianca all the way. She was just out striking, out punching, out kicking her all the way to the third round. So yeah, this is a fight y'all need to check out. I think it was 3 rounds or four. I saw this like a couple months ago, but yeah, definitely check this one out. Bianca Saddlemeyer versus Florencia Greco. You'll definitely understand what I mean when I say that was like a fight of a big highlight of 2020. My next fight, honorable mention, is Jessica Andrade versus Rose Namajunas 2. This was another good solid action packed fight. Rose Namajunas on her get back. She went in there, fought a very patient fight in the beginning against Jessica Andrade, but it wasn't until she started to slow down and come stationary that she started catching some big shots in there from Jessica. It's one of those things. Like if this was a 5 round fight, Jessica Andrade may have scored another knockout win over Rose. So Rose, she went in there and held on. She was still fighting back in the pocket in the phone booth, which, I was like, yo, get the hell out now, go back to boxing from the outside. Overall, it was just some good back and forth action. I think Rose suffered a broken nose in this fight. I know the eye was swollen, from that phone booth fight in like the third round. Rose nearly got stopped in that third round, after winning the first two, in my opinion. But that third round, she was about out on her feet. She made it out and she won a split decision. So yeah, it was a much earned split decision. Jessica Andrade just kind of has her number sometimes. She knows how to close in and work the body, then go upstairs and um, really put the power shots on Rose. I mean, Jessica Andrade did make some improvements in this fight. Nothing major, but they were obvious, like the head movement, the feints, cutting off the octagon just a little bit here and there, but nothing too big. But it was enough to do damage on Rose Namajunas. So that was a good action-packed fight. My third one, Lupita Benitez versus Vanessa Demopoulos. This was an LFA 94. This is a strawweight championship fight. Lupita Benitez, she went in there and put on a very solid performance early on. I'd say like rounds 1 through 3, she was putting on a solid striking clinic. Y'all got to go back and watch this fight. It was a very solid striking clinic against a strong grappler who was just off timing. She could just never get the timing down of Lupita. Lupita was exposing the lack of boxing skill in Vanessa Demopoulos. Just constant straight punches down the pipe, kicks to the leg, just doing whatever she wanted. But it was in like end of the third round or the fourth round where Lupita Benitez became more stationary. And much like whenever Rose became stationary against Jessica Andrade, that's where Vanessa started letting go. She started landing more bombs, landing more hits. She bloodied up. Lupita Benitez swole the eye and started to come back strong. There was some good back and forth action in the fourth and the fifth, but I feel like Lupita Benitez, she won the fight solid. I had it like 4 rounds to 1, and she took the strawweight championship belt from Vanessa Demopoulos. So definitely high up on my list as a fight of the night for fight of the year for 2021. Shout out to both ladies, Lupita Benitez and Vanessa with the heart. But my number one, let's go ahead and put the picture up, right? Yeah, here we go. My number one fight of the year for 2020 is Weili Zhang versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk. That's the first and only time you hear me try to say her last name. But yeah, Weili Zhang versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Had to be this fight. It had to be this fight, for a lot of good reasons. I'm talking about you had everything. You had action. You had good build up to this fight. You had good dedication from both fighters. You had trash talk. Then when you get in the octagon, you had the skill set. You had blood. You had back and forth. And the thing is about the toe to toe battles in this fight, it wasn't even just like toe to toe where you know, two fighters just abandon skill and they just start throwing boom, 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 boom. We just hitting each other. We just hitting each other. No, it was all about skill for skill, high speed chess match. You know, Wei Lee would win in exchange because of her placement of her feet. You know, she would be standing at a good angle to close in on Joanna. You know, she would catch Joanna on good timing. She would land something good up top and kind of rock Joanna. Or Joanna would just keep Wei Lee on the outside with some good front kicks, and then she'd come back, switch to southpaw, stuff those straight left hands down the pipe, and hit Wei Lee right in the face, you know, constantly with those good straight left hands in southpaw position. So it was never like just abandoning the skill set. We're just going to hit each other, hit each other. No, everything they set up, everything they were landing that was big and bloody, it was set up pretty. It was set up pretty in there. I'm talking about even the big shots that Wei Lee landed to put that big hematoma, as you can see right here on Joanna's head. You know, everything that she landed in that third and fourth is what it was calculated. It was calculated. It was those calculated shots that put that big swelling on Joanna's head. You know, the shots you don't see coming are the biggest shots that do the most damage. You know, and I did my post fight talk about this fight. I did my post fight discussion when I um, this fight came out back in March. I actually might revisit it again. I might come back to it, do like a whole film study on it because that's how good a fight it was. You know, Joanna and Wei Lee bring that type of action packed style. So I would really like to see a rematch with these two. In all honesty, I felt like Wei Lee won this fight. I watched it two, three, four, five. Let me see. I watched it about two, three times. I watched about four more times. Yeah. I watched about four more times since the fight's taking place. And I had Wei Lee winning three times, and I actually had Joanna winning once. You know, that's how good a close fight it was. You know, and even when Wei Lee was winning those other like three, four times I had, it was still it was still very tough for her to do it. You know, she really had to dig deep and showcase a lot of heart in this fight, you know. So Wei Lee really showcased durability in this fight, dog, quickness, and you know, the heart. Same with Ioana. You know, she showcased all that too. She just came up short by just by this much. I think if she would have scored maybe like a takedown or a knockdown in maybe the fifth, Ioana would have taken it. Definitely. But like I said, skill for skill, heart for heart, you know, blood for blood. This was fight of the year. I'm talking about for men or women. UFC 248's Weili Zhang versus Joanna Janjeric. But yeah, guys, let me know in the comment section, guys, what y'all's fight of the year was. I mean, in my opinion, this was that fight. Like I said, for either men or women, you know, this was actually the co-main event that night. I think it was what Israel versus Yoel. This fight, man, this was the one that outshined it big time. This was that fight, man. But yeah, go check it out if you haven't seen it. If you have seen it, go watch it two, three more times. But yeah, let's move on to my fighter of the year. All right. My fighter of the year is pretty much, I can't really say by default because this fighter did do enough to earn it. And I'm not just saying it because another network said this was the fighter of the year, but my fighter of the year, when I went back and looked at everybody's body of work and what they did outside of the octagon and their accomplishments in the octagon as well, you know, as far as being technical and making the right adjustments in a fight, I had to pick this fighter hands down. Just had to pick this fighter hands down because they really made big out of this situation even before this pandemic. So my fighter of the year, hands down, has to go to Bellator featherweight champion Chris Cyborg. And like I said, I have a few reasons why I gave this fighter of the year to her for WMMA. Number one, she just captured her fourth world title in another organization. So that's Strike Force, Invicta FC, UFC, and Bellator. So she holds four major belts in all those organizations now. So she's definitely set the bar high for WMMA. She was able to stay active. She fought two times this year, and you know that was against top level competition. Her debut in the Bellator division was a title fight. It was a dominant performance over Julia Budd and a title defense against a very solid competitive boxer in Arlene Blenko. You know, so right there, that tells you that Chris Cyborg has really made good of her situation since getting cut from the UFC. And that's another thing I want to talk about, her brand that she's building. This is another thing you have to give her a lot of credit for and factor in why she is fighter of the year. She's been able to capitalize off a major Bellator deal and make more money than she's ever had, especially with building up her YouTube channel as well, And I say she's actually in a better position than when she was in the UFC because she's really made a name for herself. She's really been able to know her worth after leaving the UFC. The UFC, they're going to pay you a flat rate or a little bit more than what you're worth, but they're going to keep you in the box. But for Cyborg, and maybe this not might work for all fighters, but for a Cyborg leaving the UFC, she's been able to step out of the box and become known as this much bigger mixed martial artist than she is. I still feel like Amanda Nunes, yes, she is the GOAT, but Chris Cyborg is right there too. Until that rematch happens, then Amanda Nunes is number one in the octagon. But all around, just as far as like building the brand and showing growth in the octagon, that was Chris Cyborg this year. That has to be Chris Cyborg this year. Going back to her wins against Julia Budd and Arlene Blanco, I'm talking about, hey, she went in there, showcased some great technical savvy in there, very patient, calculated at breaking her opponents down, not just dependent on power, but strength. She was able to go in there and utilize her tools, her clinch game, the knees, the strikes, the groundwork, the ground and pound. She did a little bit of everything. She showcased a lot since that Amanda Nunes loss, and that's why I say she's made better at that situation. Well, I could almost argue that she's making out better than Amanda Nunes in this situation because, again, she's broken out of the box, built up a YouTube following, built up a big following across the world, with the YouTube channel and the Bellator deal. Again, that won't work for every fighter, but she's been able to go back to her roots and really do that with this move to Bellator, where everything's good because Amanda Nunes has two belts, but at the same time, would she still pull in like a big audience like Chris Cyborg, the way Chris Cyborg has just, been able to make moves for herself now that she has more freedom. So you gotta factor all that in for this year. It's been a hard year. It's been a hard year for a lot of people, but Chris Cyborg has been really, making she's been making moves, turning that, making lemonade out of lemons, if you will. I know that's an old saying, but life's been giving us all lemons, but she's making lemonade out of it. She's really going in there and working her hustles. Big YouTube following right now, and I think more is to come from her. You might get a couple more title fights from her before she retires. And I think even if she retires, she'll have like a gym, she'll have a good brand built, and good money to live off of. So yeah, you got to factor all that in as a fighter of the year. That's why I gave Floyd Mayweather fighter of the year a couple years ago, because it's not just about the accomplishments in the ring or the octagon, it's the accomplishments out of the octagon as well and the ring, those moves you make. So yeah, 2020 fighter of the year in WMMA, hands down, Chris Cyborg. All right, so last category. Last category for this episode, 5 fights that we need for 2021. These 5 fights I want to see. I want to see these. Actually, wait a minute. I got about 6. I got 6 fights. I thought I had 5, but I got 6 down here. Yeah. So yeah, these are just 6 fights that we need for next year, 2021. And in no particular order. Well, maybe they are, I think. Yeah, they are in particular order. So first up, number 6, I'm going to say Chelsea Chandler versus Kayla Harrison. I feel like this is a fight that already has a good backstory built up to it. There's a little Twitter beef there. There's been a call out. There's a little history there that, Kayla Harrison chose to fight Courtney King instead of Chelsea Chandler. Kayla Harrison went on Twitter to say she fight Chelsea Chandler in the street for free. So there's just so much build up to this fight. Kayla Harrison wants to return to featherweight. She wants to do some more things with her contract with PFL this year coming. But I think eventually that fight could happen at the end of 2021. If Chelsea doesn't get signed by the UFC, and if Kayla Harrison continues to fight on in PFL, if there's like another tournament, so This is wishful thinking, I know, but it is a fight that we need for the featherweight division. I'm sure that Chelsea Chandler would take this fight. I'm sure she would take this fight even if PFL called her. If they wanted to go down to 145 there or maybe 150, she would take it. So yeah, that's a fight that we need. I think it's a style that Chelsea Chandler um, could deal with, and it's a style that might hand Kayla Harrison her first loss. You're dealing with a powerful striker, a fighter that's solid on the ground, and Chelsea Chandler. She's a dog in there. Like I said, she doesn't just talk; she walks it. So that's a fight that Kayla Harrison would probably get upset in my opinion. I'm a fan of Chelsea Chandler. That's one reason why I'm saying it. But when you look at it technically, on who's better on the feet and who has good takedown defense and who really wants it, I'm looking at Chelsea Chandler right now. Especially, she's wanting the big fights. So yeah, I really want to see that fight. Number 4, Kanako Murata versus Verna Jandaroba. I gotta see it. I gotta see this fight, man. We got two strawweights in here who are not only like, one's a solid wrestler, one's a solid grappler, but they like to throw hands. They got beautiful hand game. I think they're still growing. Of course, Verna Jandaroba, she's still growing with hers, but her hands are good. Her hands are decent. Her footwork is good. Kanaka Murata, her hands are good. She knows how to use good jabs and good feints to get takedowns. Very physically strong in the guard on the ground. And some of those openings and those weaknesses she have might make for a dramatic finish for Verna Jandaroba. I don't know, but can Verna Jandaroba take the power and the aggression of Murata? I don't know. We got to see it happen next year, man. So that's a fight I'm looking forward to. Good fight for Verna to bounce back after a controversial loss to Mackenzie Dern. All right, number 3, Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Did I get that right? I said it again. Versus Yan Xiaonan. This is a fight. Number 3, strawweight Yan versus number 2, Joanna, right? This would be good. I think this is a good style matchup, very explosive. Could be another fight of the year for Joanna. Both fighters, they throw down with the hands, very high level strikers. The one thing about Yana feels like she needs to sit down on her shots, be a little more assertive, and be a little bit more quick on the feet, and her defense can be problems. But she does have the reach in this. I think she has some good reach in this fight that could be interesting with Joanna. And, fighters that can fight on the outside tend to give Joanna a little bit of trouble. Come forward fighters that'll come in her zone, she'll piece them up all day. But if you stay on the outside and make it a chess match and make her wait and you pick your shots like Rose does, it could be for an interesting fight. So that's one I want to see. Um, Juliana Velasquez versus Denise Kielholtz. This is a much needed championship fight. The best fight and the best in Bellator. I think this is the best flyweight fight Bellator is going to make for a while, because we have two explosive fighters. Well, one that can fight careful, but one that's explosive, and Denise. Juliana, she brings a lot to the table. Good counter striker, good left hand, good takedown defense, good, very good in the clinches. Denise Kielholtz, like I always describe her, power in both hands, explosive kickboxer, black belt in judo. Just so many tools for both of these fighters. I feel like this is going to be a good fight. Denise on the inside could spell trouble for Juliana. Juliana keeping a good distance, landing good counter left hands. How's this fight going to go? I don't know. We need to see it. We need to make it happen. Number 2, Weili Zhang versus Rose Namajunas. Really want to see this championship fight. It's being talked about. It's reportedly in the works, but it's a must. It's a must happen for the strawweight division. The best fight and the best once again. Weili, she proved her worth. She proved how tough she is, how durable she is, how skilled she is against Joanna and the heart. Rose Namajunas. Last time out, she destroyed Joanna in one round. She came back in a rematch, pieced Joanna up once again, dominated. Since then, she's split fights with Jessica Andrade. And, some people want to know where she's at right now. They think she's ducking Weili. I personally don't. So I feel like, she's a martial artist. Weili's a martial artist. They really both appreciate the sport. It's a much needed fight. There really won't be a lot of trash talk to this one. And that's one reason why I want to see this. I want to see two civil fighters who love the sport get in there and compete on a high level. Will Weili do it? Will Weili be tough enough to dog Rose out? I don't know. Will Rose be able to keep this a chess match from the outside? Get the respect of Weili with her power? I don't know. That's why we need to make it happen. All right, my number 1. This might alternate between Rose and Weili. Actually, I think I want to see Whaley versus Rose a little bit more than this fight. But my number one for right now is Valentina Shevchenko versus Jessica Andrade. And yeah, this is a fight that's got to happen too. Jessica Andrade's been holding on to the number one spot since defeating Caitlin Chikagan. Dana White feels like Jessica Andrade has the style to beat Valentina Shevchenko. He feels like she's bringing something to the table she's never seen before. I don't believe that. I think that Jessica Andrade definitely brings some danger to the fight, but nothing Valentina's never seen before. It's all about execution. I feel like Valentina just has too many tools for Jessica Andrade. But like I said, those moments where Jessica Andrade can come in there and execute, you never know what could happen. That's why we got to see it happen. Because even if you go back to guys like Floyd Mayweather versus Marcus Maidana, Floyd's the better boxer, but there was times where Marcos Maidana was able to close the distance and land good power shots in that fight, make it competitive. So there might be some physical moments in this Valentina fight where, Jessica Andrade just bull rushes and capitalizes on some openings, not necessarily too many weaknesses in Valentina's game. It's all about capitalizing on mistakes being made at that moment in the fight. That's what makes it more interesting. So yeah, that fight needs to happen. I would like to see that in the summer or the spring. Hopefully it happens in the spring. But yeah, quick recap. 6 fights we need this year. Chelsea Chandler versus Kayla Harrison. Kanako Murata versus Verna Jandaroba. Joanna versus Jan Janan. Juliana Velasquez versus Denise Kielholtz. Willie Zone versus Rose Namajunas. And Valentina Shevchenko versus Jessica Andrade. So yeah, those are my fights that I want to see next year. I know I'm not being too greedy asking for that because I feel like the best should always fight the best, right? Always. But yeah, man, like I said, it's been a rough year. It's been a rough 2020, but for those of us that are still here, those of us that have survived the pandemic, I send out positive energy and condolences to those friends that have lost loved ones and people that have lost their jobs in this during this pandemic. So I definitely got to send out uh, like I said, positive vibes and condolences to those people. But like I said, it's been a rough year. But for those of us that are here, we still gotta stay blessed. You gotta say we're blessed to be here. Um, I was able to, like I said, make adjustments to the year, and take advantage of different things that I didn't know I could do. I actually had to prove to be a survivalist in some moments and switch up the hustle. And I had to say, okay, well, if I can't do this year, these two or three things I want to do, well, I got to go this way, and I was able to do that. And, this pandemic, I hate to sound dark, but I mean, there were some good moments to it, because like I said, it helped me really showcase how disciplined I can be and how committed I can be to certain things and how helpful I could be. I was trying to do my part during this pandemic, which I felt I did, definitely tried to follow all the precautions, which I'm still doing now. For the past 9 months, it's still been the same thing for me. And I've been keeping sane, and by doing that, it's just by staying disciplined, I'm trying to think of the better that comes out of why you wear a mask, the better is staying home, the better of washing your hands, which I always do anyways. I'm trying to factor in all those different things to help other people out. So, I feel like I'm doing my part by trying to protect others from, what could be on me, So yeah, 2020 has been a rough year, but who's to say the beginning of 2021 is not gonna be just as rough, you know what I mean? So everything ain't gonna change just because we step into a new year because we still are the same people that are stepping into that new year. So it's up to us to make that change. It's up to us to make that change when we get over into that new year. You want a different year, you gotta be a different you. That's all I gotta say on that. But yeah, man, been a good year even for the channel. Like I said, wasn't able to do these other things I wanted to do. BJJ being one of the things I was going to hit this year. I was going to start hitting the mats this year, but that's out of it. But I did get a chance to, get a lot of interviews, get my channel going bigger than I wanted, than I figured I could. So I just want to say thanks to my new subscribers, my old subscribers, everybody that supports me. And yeah, I got big things coming for the channel. If the pandemic and the lockdown carries over into the beginning of 2021 and on, I'm gonna just keep pushing the same way, So yeah, if y'all guys want to support, just send a little something to the Cash App. I'm gonna have it posted here. $ Combo Breaker 99. And yeah, man. Hope everybody had a good holiday. And I want to say Happy New Year to everybody, and wish everybody the best. More is coming from the channel. Shout out to everybody I interviewed, all the fighters I interviewed, the interviews I got coming. So yeah, it's going down this year, man. So yeah, that was everything that I wanted to cover for 2020. My top 5 submissions, top 5 knockouts, top 5 fighters that I want to see in the UFC in 2021. My fighter of the year, my top 6 fights that we need next year. So yeah, man. Let me know in the comment section, guys. Some of your most memorable moments in 2020 in WMMA or hell, any fight. So yeah, guys, that's all I got on this one. Again, let me know in the comment section y'all's favorites. Make sure y'all subscribe. Combo Breaker 99. I'm out. Happy New Year. Peace.